Us today at 4 o'clock. Here is the latest decision on Baylor men's basketball. James Akinjo. There were thoughts that he could come back. There was also a little push and like a give and take. I've declared to pursue my dream and enter the NBA draft. He also apparently has planned to hire an agent. So that piece is settled. Kendall Brown, James Akinjo. Jeremy Sohan next in line, or Matthew Meyer.
Yeah, and when you look at it, James Akinjo leaving, while it would have been, an embarrassment of riches for Baylor to get him back, opens up more for LJ Cryer, opens up more for Keontae George, opens up more for Adam Flagler and the guards they do have coming back next year. So that's opportunity and probably lends weight to more weight to LJ Cryer coming back because there's more basketballs to go around now that James Akinjo is off to the NBA.
Yeah, and I'm telling you right now, we discussed this a little bit last week, a little bit of the future of Baylor with LJ Cryer and some of the other guards and who was coming in. Keontae George, LJ Cryer gets healthy, and of course Langston Love coming off the knee injury gets healthy, among others. That were there enough basketballs to go around? James Akinjo for this team this year, although at times was criticized for handling the ball a little bit too much, was unbelievable for them, for this team this year, especially with the injuries they had. But he moves on. He decides he's going to turn pro because he had the option to come back as well.
Yeah, and, like we heard Alvin Brooks say yesterday, when they were at full strength, after that TCU game, they were undefeated. And then halfway through the TCU game from then on, for 10 weeks, they were not at full strength again. And that was the one right there. It was the TCU game was where Jeremy Sohan and James Akinjo both got banged up in that game.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what his stock is. I don't follow the NBA draft hardly as closely as I do the NFL draft. And we've got way longer to wait now for the NBA draft as well. We got several months to go here, or I guess not several, but you've got a few months to go.
It's in July, right?
Yeah, so we got a little while to go. But, yeah, I'm not surprised by this in any way. I just kind of, and it's not one of those, like, I'm going to protect my feelings by just assuming everything's going to go wrong, and then, it goes right and I'm happy and surprised by it. I just figured James Akinjo was gone. I was just kind of just reading tea leaves and just my assumption. I assumed Jeremy Sohan's probably going to be gone, and I figured Kendall Brown would be gone. So 2 for 3 so far, and we'll see what Sohan does. But, yeah, I was just kind of banking on him probably, and he's moved around so much. He's been on, 3 different college rosters?
Georgetown, Arizona, Baylor.
He's been at 3 different colleges, so, he's probably ready to go off and do something different and make some money and all that.
He can, and here's the thing. He's a point guard who can drive and score, in addition to, he needs to probably get better at distributing, but he's still pretty good at that. But he can drive and score. He has that great little teardrop shot that he has. His jump shot is really good. He can penetrate. He can do all those things that you want offensively. So, and he's a good defensive player as well. So, yeah, he's an NBA. James Akinjo's an NBA player. I don't know where the NBA draft after the first about 18 picks, just outside the lottery, is really hard, because once you get outside the lottery and you start talking about non-guaranteed contracts, then it stops necessarily being about who might be the most accomplished guy. Really, then, the top of the lottery is kind of the intersection of most accomplished plus most talented. But the bottom part of it is not necessarily most accomplished. It might be most talented that you can get right now.
Mark Cuban drafted Sic'Em Singh in the second round of the NBA draft. Sic'Em Singh. You talk about total flyer because he's 7'4" tall and really has nothing else to show for it. But hey, this freakazoid may be able to get turned into a player. Yeah. Let's just imagine somebody just doing that in the second round. Let's draft Laquan McGowan. He doesn't really particularly fit anything, but man, he's huge and he's big, and let's just see. And the NBA draft is kind of wild like that, where it is truly, once you get past the lottery, there's late first round picks that aren't even necessarily guaranteed to make their teams. It's crazy.
Yeah, and now the way that basketball is set up, not only with the G League but with international play taking the step up that it has, you can have other people do your developmental work for you. There's Royce O'Neal is a great example of that. Go overseas for a little bit, G League for a little bit. Now you're one of the better players on a really good Utah Jazz team. So,
well, and the good news, Baylor's staff is set, and now, with what you have coming in, what you have coming back, those who have been injured, LJ Cryer and also Langston Love, the entrance of Keontae George, among others. Guess what? The transfer portal is open with point guards, and you got to go find one. If, in fact, you think you need one, and I think they do, someone who's experienced, and who wouldn't want to come run this team with all the weapons around whoever that will be.
Well, good for them is that they've got recent success, because I think most every team in the country is looking for point guards based on the transfer portal. So that's going to be a fight to see who can actually, pull guys out of there and land guys. But fortunately for Baylor, I'm not too worried about that. I mean, they're an appealing program right now. Certainly more appealing than the majority of other teams out there. And yeah, I mean, outside of that, they don't have a whole – I mean, they've got questions, don't get me wrong, but they got far less questions than most other teams out there as far as next year goes, after losing potentially 3 guys to the NBA draft early.
Look, and Scott and staff are pretty undefeated in finding point guards that are effective out of the transfer portal, going back 8, 9, 10 years now. I mean, so they have – I cannot think of a player outside of Al Freeman who went to NC State and had a good year.
Yep.
And that was kind of both the sides of that was mutually beneficial. Al had kind of hit his peak with where he was going to be at Baylor, especially the style of play that they had at the time. But outside, and Al Freeman, when he left, I mean, that's the only one who kind of got better. But you talk about guys like Deuce Bello and
went to Missouri.
He's always the guy that's mentioned.
Yeah, but I mean, but they don't lose a lot of guys to the transfer portal either. Dane Danger left, and we'll see how
John
that
Jacobs
goes.
made that. That was what he said.
But they don't they get out way more than they put in. So Scott Drew's kind of like the Warren Buffett of the transfer portal.
John Jacobs said yesterday he expected this team to continue their streak of keeping who they have. And yes, he also admitted that there were some who would make decisions on going to the next level. We knew that meant Kendall Brown or Jeremy Sohan, most likely a Matthew Meyer. But the James Akinjo one was probably further down the list as far as the one that was at top of mind, although his future was going to be
it makes more sense than 2 freshmen going, honestly, on the surface of it. He's more accomplished than either of those 2 guys, although potential is, again, like we've talked about, the NBA is much more on what can you be 3 years from now than what can you be in the rookie years, where the NFL, I think people, if you look at it like the NFL, if you're picked in the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft, you better at least contribute on special teams, at the very least. If you're a top 2-round pick now, they expect you to start by the 4th or 5th game of your first season.
So Baylor will now they have that in front of them. The good news, you get these things answered quickly. Now you start working, as I believe might have been Jared Nunez who said this to us yesterday about, and also Jacobs and Brooks, was that April is when you win championships. In football, you hear about recruiting, national signing day, whatever. But in basketball, with the transfer portal, this is when you go find whoever you don't have and you try to add them to the team. So next year's guards include Langston Love, includes L.J. Cryer, Dale Bonner, Keontae George, and who am I missing? I forgot who the other guard was. Another guard that I'm missing. So that's James Akinjo. I know that at times I would get into these little back and forth on Twitter. Where would they have been without him? I don't even want the answer. And yes, at times there were frustrations with how much he controlled the dribble and how they got stagnant at times. But he also was overall their best player, and also one reason he was named as an All-American as well. When we come back, 5:30, John Machota covers